Hi there. Welcome, friends. I'm Amanda Nicole, and this is the next video in this series called All Things Made New, which is my gift, my offering to the church, particularly the Christian church of plant medicine. The church is in great need of healing, as are those that are inside of it and along the edges and leaving and have left. And for those of you who may wonder what in the world made her decide to offer plant medicine in this way and for this reason, I'll put a link below this video to the first one that was made so you can hear a bit of my story and my why and my heart, a little bit of my background, and you can listen and learn how. How would she even know what plants to offer for the church? And really for myself, because I am a daughter of the church. I was raised, as they say, in the church my whole life, and then a pastor's wife, and now still considering myself to be a Christian, but as you might imagine, maybe perhaps not accepted by the institution of the church, or at least, parts of it. So the plant that I would like to offer in this video is pine, particularly white pine. Pine is for the shame and the guilt that has been placed on us and that we carry from the church, from our experiences in it, and from the teachings that we have received in it. I'm going to tell you, friends, for a place that speaks so much about love, I'm not sure there's a place that can make me feel worse. And not just right now, but really my whole life, like since I was small. Certain veins of the church, certain sects of the church, very much want to emphasize what they would call sin and their definition of sin. And instead of operating through love, although that's spoken of so much, they really operate through fear. They will make you afraid. And if you are afraid, you will be saved. If you are afraid, you will come to Jesus. If you are afraid, you will change your ways. Fear, not love. Love draws, by the way. Love draws. Love unifies. That's what pine does. We'll get to that. And so if we're made to feel enough shame, who wants to feel shame? So there's a lot of shame from the church. Now, are you ashamed enough? Are you ashamed of yourself? Will you change your ways now? Guilt. Is the burden and weight of that guilt enough now? Will you change your ways now? We're made to feel so dirty, filthy, and awful. Now, the church will say that they're not making us feel that way. That's us. That's our own sin, our own hearts. That's why we feel that way. I don't think so. They make very small young children feel that way. And if you've ever seen a child, like my daughter, she's almost 4, she's so free. She thinks she's wonderful. There is no shame or guilt piled up on her back. She is just a daughter of the divine, and she dances through this world. But if the church were to have its way with her, as the church expresses itself through certain doctrines and teachings and particular denominations and practices, she won't be that way for very long. Because they'll tell her, you've got yourself all wrong, little one. You're not really as wonderful and full of spirit and magic and dance and love and brightness and joy as you think you are. You're actually very dark. There's actually a great deal of darkness inside of you, a great deal that's filthy. As they say, you're born in sin. They'll say, this is your nature, this is who you are. You're fooling yourself if you think you're anything different. And so the shaming begins, the guilt begins, the burden of sin, as they say, begins to be mounted on our backs. And then as we get older, we do commit what the church calls sins. I would like to say we do things that are not loving. We operate outside of love. And we do things outside of love when we've forgotten that we're loved. And then the church shames us and makes us feel guilty. And then there are conditions for coming back into the fold, conditions for being accepted, conditions for being loved. But we don't feel very lovable, and it becomes hard for us to believe that we can be received. It becomes hard for us to believe we can be forgiven because this burden, this weight of shame and of guilt that we carry. So pine is for the shame and the guilt. Pine is cleansing. It's a cleansing plant. It's a cleansing herb. Antiseptic, antibacterial. It cleanses the atmosphere, washes and makes things new and fresh and clear. This is pine. So you can sit with the pine tree. You can drink pine needle tea. Maybe you'd like to work with the resin. Maybe you like to burn some pine and smell it. And be made new, be made clean. One of the podcast episodes that I did for my podcast, Whispers Plant Spirit Medicine, I think there'll be a link down below if you like to listen to some of the episodes. The connection was made for me with pine and what the church calls the Lord's Supper or communion or the Eucharist. But this is my body broken for you. This is my blood shed for you. There is a washing. There is a cleansing. This is not yours. You do not need to carry it. You are loved. You are accepted. This table is spread for you. Come, eat with me. You're wanted. I think you're beautiful. I think you're lovely. Pine begins to help us work through the shame and the guilt of the church that makes us feel unworthy so that we feel love, know we're loved, believe ourselves to be worthy, and feel ready to approach the divine, to embrace the divine, to engage with the divine. You know, in the church, I can't even tell you how many hundreds, maybe thousands of times in sermons, Bible studies, lyrics to songs, I've been told that I'm unworthy, that I'm full of guilt and I'm full of shame, and I'm unworthy. We're going to talk about some more plants that help us heal and know and believe differently and move through the world in a different way. But we can begin with pine that begins to wipe away the shame and the guilt, and we begin to know that we're not so dirty and awful. We're lovely, we're clean and fresh, and we're worthy. Another aspect of pine medicine is that it brings things together. So when you look at white pine, the needles are bundled in fives. And this is what pine does. It gathers. It gathers and brings together. And if you look along the edge of the branch there, you know, you'll have these gatherings of fives. And you have these, what we would, I guess, call leaves. And then the branch and this whole tree, all created through these gatherings of fives. Gathering, and then they all become part of a greater whole. It brings together, and there is stories and traditional teachings where it was under a pine tree that the hatchet was buried with these chiefs of these nations. They buried the hatchet under the pine tree. Peace, reconciliation, unity, unification. Think of that sticky pine sap like a glue, bringing it together. The church is in great need of unification, of a bringing together, not division, and a great need to bury the hatchet. Have you noticed, because I have, with my background and my connections with the church seems to be at war with everyone and everything. It, especially in its more conservative expressions, finds itself to be in a battle, in a war with the world on every hand. There was this song that I sang when I was little, Onward Christian Soldiers. Do you know that? Have you heard it? Onward, Christian soldiers, marching as to war. Right. So I was taught from a very young age. I'm a little soldier in the army. How did it go? I may never march in the infantry, ride in the cavalry, shoot the artillery. I may never zoom o'er the enemy, but I'm in the Lord's army. And we would go on. I was very young and taught that I was a soldier of the cross, a soldier of the church. Oh goodness. You know what? I don't want to fight anymore. Not in that way. I don't mind to be a warrior. I want to be brave. I want to have courage. I want to defend and protect. But I do not want to fight. I do not want to be aggressive. I do not want to forcefully advance. So the church is in great need of pine. Bury the hatchet. The East and the West with the church. The Protestant and the Catholic. The various denominations. The denominations within denominations. The church on the left side of the road that split from the church on the right side of the road. The people who were once a part of the same church that now no longer speak to each other. The divisions inside of families, the divisions inside of communities, an enormous amount of division. The church would say, well, that's your fault because you've departed from the truth, and we stand witness against you and all these sorts of things. I love the wisdom of pine and the wisdom of the indigenous elders who came together and buried their hatchets and said that it's just enough of that. Let's have peace and let's be loving. Love draws, love unifies. That's what love does. So if the church would like to be love and express love, let's use some pine medicine and let's come together. When people come together and they bury the hatchet and love is experienced and peace is experienced, it doesn't mean all of those people are the same or have the same beliefs or have the same practices. It simply means that love is being chosen and peace is being chosen and space is being given. And a recognition, which is lovely with pine, as we spoke about, to see ourselves as part of a greater whole. We're part of a greater whole. I don't even understand little pine needles and their little group of 5 fighting with each other, or this little group of 5 and this little group of 5 fighting with each other. Well, you look at a great pine tree, that's not what's happening. They see themselves as one, as part of the pine. We are pine. And so they dwell together in peace and in unity, right? This is what the church is in great need of. Not separation, not division, but unity, a bringing together. And this is what pine can do. It gathers all the pieces. So to tie this back to the beginning, as we might think, well, how do these medicines go together in one plant to help us with shame and guilt, but also to help us with peace and unity and bringing together? Sometimes we need that in our own bodies, our own souls, and our own spirits. We can be so beat up and traumatized and hurt by what we are told about ourselves and our persons in relation to the divine that we lose parts of ourselves. We lose them. Or maybe they're taken from us. And we need to gather up all of our pieces again. The pieces of us that we put away, that we hid, that we punished, that we, were violent towards, that we cut off, that we ostracized because we were told that those parts of us were shameful, or we were told that we should feel guilty for those parts, or we were told that those parts were unacceptable, made us unacceptable, were parts of us that were unworthy and made us unworthy. We have to go and gather up all of our own pieces again, you know. I kind of have this image in my mind right now of us going around like underneath, you know, a pine tree, all these little needles, picking up all of these little needles, all of these little parts of us. There are so many parts of us, so many sermons that we heard, so many punishments that we were given, so much discipline, so many song lyrics that we sang, so many images that we saw, so many things that were communicated directly or indirectly where we just dropped our needles. We just dropped them. Mm-hmm. And so Pine is to gather it all up, gather up all the pieces, gather up all the needles, becoming whole again, becoming one again, gathering it all back up. Because one of the things that the church does teach is that we are fearfully and wonderfully made. They'll even say, like, you're each like a little snowflake, unique and different. None of you are the same. And they'll say that God made me, God made you, that we are creations of the divine. We are the manifestation of the divine breath and the divine word. We're told that in one moment, and then the next we're told that we're malformed in some way. And so we drop these parts of ourselves. We need to gather them all back up and believe once again that we are fearfully and wonderfully made, that we are loved, that the divine sings over us and says, you are very good. You are very good. So I'd like to offer pine medicine. I'm feeling like a song might want to come. Hold on just a second. Pine gave me a song once to sing, and I'm seeing if it wants to find its way up and out. It does. Bear with me. If you watched the video on Violet, you'll know that I'm still working on having my voice return. Okay. Pine also helps us breathe. Let's just come a little bit more. That's the song Pine gave me. It sounded way better the first time she gave it. My voice was so clear because she was right there, lending it her crystal clear, pure energy. That's actually who we are. Crystal clear, pure energy. But she wanted to offer that. Every time I would go past her, she would say, sing me my song, sing me my song. And I would sing to her. So just remember that you are pure, clean, crystal, like snow white, freshly fallen snow energy. That's who you are. Okay, so that's fine medicine. And I'll be back again soon with a bit more medicine for the church and for those of us who are in it, have been a part of it, have left it, who are in need of healing.